Hey, today I'm going to show you what the weapons look like before and after the update. We'll go over the patched bugs and discuss whether or not the latest buffs have made the game too easy. There's a lot more we'll be discussing, so if you haven't already, support the channel by tapping the like button below and subscribing. We're going to start off with the Crossbow. This weapon wasn't too bad prior to the update because you could close Terminid holes and you could also blow up bot fabricators. When it came to the explosion radius, before this patch it wasn't great, but now they've increased the explosion radius by 50% and have also boosted the explosion damage from 150 to 300. This is a massive improvement and the damage makes up for the slow rate of fire now. It's pretty ideal for taking out larger groups of enemies, whether that's a brood commander or even the smaller bugs, by applying an exceptional amount of damage. And yeah, man, I wasn't a crossbow fan before, but now I am after this update. Next for explosives, we have the one and only Eruptor. To say the least, we've been waiting for the developers to buff it for such a long time because, in fact, they had to remove the shrapnel a few months ago due to how powerful it actually was. Afterwards, there wasn't much to talk about because it wasn't as great as it once was, as you can see in this clip. So what Arrowhead has done now is that they've brought back the shrapnel, replacing it with the frag shrapnel instead of the shrapnel from the orbital airburst strike. They've also buffed the explosion radius by 33%. However, they've also reduced the AoE explosion from 340 to 225. Does this really affect the way the weapon works now that they've reduced it by 115? No, I don't think so. From testing out, it's incredible. Maybe not as crazy as it once was with the orbital airburst strike shrapnel, but it's just right now. Whether you're fighting against the Terminids or the Automatons, you're going to have a great time with this. Coming up at number 3, the Torture has finally seen some tender love and care. I think we all can admit it wasn't too appealing with the visual effects and the damage output. After the Escalation of Freedom patch, this primary as well as the rest of the Freedom Flame War bonds couldn't receive any love in the beginning because, you know, of the flamethrower nerf. They've now decided to revert those changes, and this of course goes for all the flamethrower type weapons, whether it's the Flam 40 or the Crisper. The developers have also done more than just reverting the visual effects. They've increased both the AP and damage. It's incredible against chargers, as you can see here, because you can now exterminate them without a problem, similar to how it was with the Flam 40 originally. Alright, lastly for the flamethrower type weapons, we have the Flam 40. I only want to highlight how ineffective it was with the chargers because it's pretty bad. Consequently, the developers have reverted the flamethrower changes, increasing the damage by 33% and also boosted the armor penetration from 3 to 4. It's basically back to how it was before the EOF update, but better. Overall, there are some huge changes to the flamethrower weapons, and man, it's amazing. Moving on to the Scythe, I can say I wasn't a big fan of this until now. The reason why is that the burn-in effect previously felt a bit lackluster, and it seemed like there wasn't enough oomph to it. What I like now is that they've completely removed the recoil for one. Not only does it cool down a tad bit faster now, but it also ignites enemies quicker, making it an absolute beast in crowd control when you're facing off against the Terminids. What about the SMG, specifically the Defender? Is it better now? I'd like to think so. I didn't really have any issues with it prior to this patch. To be fair, I thought it was a great submachine gun. Sure, it's nothing like the Palmer where you can stagger enemies, if I can talk. Nonetheless, Arrowhead has slightly increased the damage from 70 to 75 and has added more durable damage from 7 to 8. Sure, it's a small buff, at least in my opinion, but is it noticeable? Yeah, you can for sure see the differences from the previous patch to the current one. Okay, moving on, the Knight SMG has finally received a buff. I know, I can say for sure that this was an SMG I loved using due to its functionality, but at the same time, it wasn't that appealing. I felt that this time around, they should have slightly increased the ammo, but with that said, I think it doesn't matter because they've now increased the damage from from 50 to 66, the durable damage from 5 to 7, and when it comes to picking up magazines, it will now fully refill when picking up a resupply box. Lastly, they've also reduced the recoil, making it steadier, way steadier. So I suggest switching to the semi-automatic mode because if you're using full auto, you'll probably run out of ammo quickly. It's better off in semi-auto to conserve ammo and, you know, make precise shots. Next up, we have the Diligence. No, I'm kidding. That's what I said previously in another video. I was absolutely tired, guys. But right now, I'm going to say it correctly, the Diligence. Diligence has also received a buff that I'd like to talk about. It's proven itself invaluable against the bots, right? Whether it's the smaller size bots or even the bigger ones like the Devastators. Now, I've enjoyed using it in the past to wipe out patrols, enemies from afar, and overall it's just a solid weapon that's quite useful against the automatons. So how can the developers make it even better? Well, they've increased the damage from 125 to 165, and the durable damage increased from 32 to 42. So if you thought it was powerful before, then try it out now, and you might be blown away by how crazy the Diligence is now. This, of course, is not the only weapon to see changes. The counter sniper has also been buffed. My opinion remains the same here as well, because in the past it was good with the automatons, and it still is now, but it is way more powerful. Arrowhead has increased the damage from 140 to 200, the durable damage from 14 to 20, and lastly, the stagger force has also been increased from 15 to 20. It's essentially a powerful staggering beast of a weapon. We now have to talk about the assault rifles. I think we all can agree that the assault rifles in the last patch were not up to par with some of the other weapon types. And a lot of us have been asking the developers to improve these type of weapons, so they've done that with the Liberator Penetrator by simply increasing the damage from 45 to 60. I'd say that's a decent increase from what it was previously, so does it actually make a difference on the battlefield? Sure, it does. Especially if you have used it quite often before, then you can for sure see in these clips there's a noticeable difference in damage. Whether you're fighting Brood Commanders, Stalkers, or Devastators, overall it's a lot better now. The next assault rifle is both the Liberator and the Liberator Carbine. They both receive similar buffs, so I'll include both clips. With that said, Arrowhead has done an incredible job with the Liberator. It certainly wasn't the best rifle compared to the others. However, after the update, it's great against Brood Commanders and it practically shreds them. The developers have increased the damage from 60 to 70, the durable damage from 14 to 17, and the stagger force from 10 to 15. Additionally, the maximum spare magazines have been increased from 7 to 8. And lastly, the starting spare magazines have been increased from 5 to 6. These buffs apply to the Liberator Carbine as well. The fourth Liberator weapon that's been buffed is the Liberator Concussive. This weapon wasn't used much by the community, but I think that's going to change here soon. They've really outdone themselves this time. The most noticeable difference is that the magazine has been swapped out for a drum magazine that now holds 60 rounds. The number of magazines has been reduced from 10 to 6, which isn't a big deal, and it makes sense given what the developers have stated. They mentioned the number of mags has been reduced due to the larger magazine capacity. So again, it makes a lot of sense, and it's a lot better than it was previously. I'm not sure if it's a game changer, but it's definitely been improved. And lastly, for assault rifles, there's the Tenderizer. The same goes for this one. I'm not sure if it's a game changer, but it is effective against Brood Commanders, smaller enemies, and some of the medium-sized ones as well. The reason for that is that they've increased the number of rounds in the magazines from 30 to 35, and the starting magazines have been increased from 4 to 5. I like this a lot because more ammo is such a big deal in my opinion, and this one absolutely needed it. Continuing onwards, these shotguns have seen some big improvements, specifically the spray and pray. I actually liked this weapon before, and I like it even more now. I didn't have any complaints about it previously, so with that said, it's great to see that they've given it a duckbill muzzle. No kidding. That makes the spread horizontal, but less vertical. And the total damage has been increased from 192 to 240. So yeah, it's incredible. You can use this to shred bugs away, shred off Brood Commanders' heads, and it's just a solid, reliable weapon now. Like I said, I didn't have any complaints about it previously, so if you didn't like it before, you're going to fall in love with it now. And lastly, for shotguns, the breaker has been improved as well. I know this one isn't a shocker considering we all saw the buff previews recently, but if you didn't know how it performed prior to this update, check out this clip and then see what it does afterwards. The biggest thing I love about this shotgun is that it comes with an extended magazine that holds 16 shells, and the stagger force, by the way, has been increased from 10 to 15. Speaking of last, we have the final primary weapon to receive a buff, and that's the Blitzer. The developers previously improved this weapon slightly by allowing you to hold down the trigger to fire without having to tap it again, which is all good and dandy, so how can they improve it further in this update? Well, they've slightly buffed it by making it so that you can inflict a weak stun effect that builds up with each shot. For example, you can see in this clip right here. Now that we've talked about the primary weapons, how about the secondary weapons? Is there anything here worth discussing? Absolutely. I'm not sure where to start, but let's go ahead and talk about the small buff for the Peacemaker. I have to say, I love that the developers have focused more on these beginner type weapons, right? At least that's what I think they are. They've done a great job buffing the Liberator, and now they've done a great job with the Peacemaker by increasing the spare magazine from 5 to 6. Sure, it's not a huge buff, but it definitely makes a big difference, especially if you haven't purchased a War Bond or haven't tried some of the other secondary weapons. The next secondary weapon that's been buffed is the Dagger, which has finally been buffed. I know I'm not the only one who wanted to see a change here with this weapon, and it's awesome to see what they've done with it. They've made it so that it's somewhat similar to the Scythe, which includes it gains heat more slowly, recoil has been removed, the damage has also been increased from 200 to 250, which is huge in my opinion. It can set enemies on fire faster, and they've made some adjustments to the heat visual effects as well. Last but not least, the crisper has now been improved. My opinions on this weapon still stands. It wasn't really that impressive before, not bad, but definitely not worth using. However, after the latest patch, things have changed dramatically. Not only have the visual effects been improved, but the damage has also been increased by 50%. And there have been some adjustments to the armor penetration. So moving away from the weapons, we've got to talk about the thermite grenade because it's absolutely bonkers, and I'm not overhyping it one bit, guys. The developers have turned this grenade into a freaking powerhouse. In the last update, it was practically useless on chargers. However, that has changed in the new update, and chargers get wrecked by thermite grenades because the devs have increased the damage to a whopping 2,000. Yeah, it also has a shorter fuse time so that it'll blow up faster, although the maximum number of grenades has been decreased from 4 to 3, which is not bad at all. I think it's a decent change considering the damage has been increased, so that makes sense to me as to why they would decrease the grenade count. This, of course, is not the only grenade that has received a buff. They've also made some changes to the frag grenade. It's a lot more effective against larger groups of enemies because they've actually increased the shrapnel damage by 50%. The maximum amount has also been increased from 4 to 5, and when it comes to refilling, they've increased it from 2 to 3. The game changer here is the explosion radius, which also has been boosted. Alrighty, we've talked about primaries, the secondaries, and the grenades. We're now going to cover the support weapons. I'm going to start off by saying that the support weapons have been buffed so much, it's insane how much they've been improved. What Arrowhead has done this time is that they boosted the damage for the Recoilless Rifle, Quasar Cannon, Commando, Eats, Spear, and the Patriot Exosuit rockets. I actually have a before and after for some of these weapons, like the Recoilless Rifle for instance. In the last update, you couldn't one-tap chargers in the dome, yet that has changed a lot now. It only takes one rocket to the face, and the chargers are done with. It's game over. I'm not sure if this is too much, but it certainly surprised me. There's also another stratagem that surprised me, and that was the Emancipator Mech. Before it took a lot of rockets to defeat a charger, I mean, it was a decent amount, as you could tell in this clip. It was effective, but not as effective as it is now. Honestly, it doesn't take too long to completely wreck a charger because afterwards, you can see the charger is going to be shredded within a few seconds, making the mech suits a lot better in this patch. If you've been a fan of mechs for a while now, you're going to enjoy using them even more. Besides that, the developers have also included an explanation for the Recoilless Rifle and Spear because right here they wrote, strong and reliable. The Recoilless Rifle and Spear can afford to be less accurate when firing at armored targets since most hits will eliminate enemies the size of a charger. So yeah, that right there, my thoughts, man, the changes are tremendous. The support weapons actually feel like support weapons now, and they're way more powerful, which is what I like. However, the Commando, on the other hand, can no longer one-shot Fabricators. They've actually added health and armor to the bot Fabricators, so in order to destroy a Fabricator, you'll need to fire 2 Commando rockets. Is this a big deal? I think for some it's going to be. For myself, I thought I would be upset about a change like this. Yet I don't think that matters. I don't think this actually matters at all, considering you only need 2 rockets, and there are other ways of blowing up Fabricators, so it's not a problem for me personally. I would like to know how you all feel about this, as well as the other buffs I've already discussed or will be discussing. Post a comment down below and let me know your thoughts. Lastly, for buffs, they boosted quite a few stratagems. I will leave the list here at the end, but I want to point out 2 stratagems that I thought were worth talking about. For instance, the Eagle 500 kg bomb has been massively improved. In the previous update, the radius was terrible, so bad that a charger and a Bile Titan could survive the explosion. This is no longer the case after the patch, as it wipes out Chargers and Bile Titans like it's nothing. The second stratagem that is now incredible is the Orbital Gas Strike. It's not that it was terrible previously, but for sure it has a lot more going on after the update. The gas cloud can now confuse and blind enemies so that they don't know where you are. The developers mentioned this on the Discord. We are reworking the gas gameplay mechanics to become more crowd control focused in preparation for the Chemical Agents Warbond. The gas effect has been reworked to cause blindness and confuse enemies and the Helldivers alike at the expense of reduced damage over time. I'll admit, when I saw that they mentioned reworking the gas, I thought, oh boy, here we go again. It's going to be a repeat of the flamethrower nerf. Yet that's not the case, because it's incredible what the developers have done to it now. I think this paired with the new gas resistance passive is going to be a perfect combo. With that to the side, they've made some changes to the Planetary. For example, the developers wrote, the intense heat and extreme cold modifiers are no longer static throughout the entire mission, and may change based on the time of day or different weather conditions. Some desert planets will now only have the intense heat modifiers active during the day. This means that during night, the planet will either have no modifier, or in some cases have the extreme cold modifier. Arid planets, similar to the Hellmire planet, will now only have the intense heat modifiers active during fire tornado storms. So as you can tell, there are a lot of positive changes towards planets and the modifiers, which I didn't think they were going to change this much. They've practically changed everything about the game, and not in a worse direction either. It's pretty damn good. It might just be Arrowhead's best update yet. So with that being said, they fixed a numerous amount of crashing issues, patched a lot of bugs, and fixed many annoying problems. I mean, a lot of them. Sure, they have some items listed under the known issues still, but regardless of that, it's an incredible update, and they're only going to get better from here on out. Now, what about the game's difficulty? Is it too easy? Sure, I think for some it might be way too easy, and for others it might just be at the perfect spot. My only concerns are that maybe the thermite grenades and some of the explosive weapons like the Recoiless Rifle might be a bit too overpowered. Yet, that also might be a good thing. However, I'd love to know what you all thought about the update, and if it is too easy. I don't think so, but I do believe some of the support weapons might need a slight adjustment. So post a comment down below and just let me know your overall thoughts. With that all being said, thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you guys would like to be featured in the next video, all you have to do is comment down below. I will be grabbing some of the comments from previous and in this one and feature it in the next video. So make sure you do comment. With that all said, thank you guys again, and I'll see you guys in the next one.